Oh.
Hi, welcome to Thunder Nerds. I'm Janelle Pizarro.
And I'm Frederick Philip Von Weiss, and thank you for consuming the Thunder Nerds, a conversation with the people behind the technology that love what they do.
And do tech good.
Ha! Doing tech. Dadgum. Hey, before we get started and introduce our guest, everybody, we're going to be live podcasting on May 11th at the UX Dev Summit. So if you want to stop by, see us, this is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we're going to be podcasting live the whole day. So come down and see us. We're super excited to be there and be part of the conference. So
get you a ticket.
Get you a ticket, son.
Right?
No. So that being said, let's go ahead and introduce our guest. We have Android developer and instructor, Sam Edwards. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Thank you very much. I don't know if I can dance as well as you guys, but it's chair dancing, so I'm good. I got this.
I'm a pretty good dancer. I won awards.
Yeah,
speaking
that's how we do it.
You going live from your conference, I was at DevFest Florida, where all of you were doing live broadcasting, so I definitely recommend it. Good stuff.
Yeah, DevFest Florida. Yeah, Sam, you were a speaker, and Janelle was a speaker.
Absolutely. We got all of us right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think we might even talk a little bit about some of the things that you spoke about at that show, and we'll go into details about that. But before we get to that, I believe Janelle has a question. Janelle?
Oh.
Yeah, I do have a question for you, Sam. So my question is, I would like for you to grab something in your room and that's important to your job or your function that you need every day, right? Even if you have to draw it or play charades and tell us what it is like that.
Damn, I love charades.
All right, let's see if we can figure out what it is. It's this.
Ah!
This headset is so key. So I work in Richmond, Virginia at Capital One, and our main headquarters for all of our development efforts are typically up in the DC area. So it's about 100-mile difference. So every day, whether it's on a phone call or whether it's on a Skype call or anything else, I have to have these. If I don't have them, my day is not the same. Who does this? Right? Who holds their phone to the ear? So
yeah, slightly antiquated. Oh, you know what? Speaking of a cool thing that I saw about this, did you see that thing with the new ring that they're gonna come out with? There's some people prototyping it where it's like a ring that's connected to your phone, and you could hold it up to your hand like you would be holding a phone and have a phone call that way.
I haven't heard that, but I've heard of rings that you can pay with, like Apple Pay.
Well, the ring's going to be like a multi device for all kinds of things, right? Thus multi. So you'd be able to pay, you'd be able to unlock your machine, you'd be able to make phone calls, etc., etc.
That's awesome. I just see Frodo there going, "My precious."
Yeah,
that's the one ring.
Super weird.
Yeah,
it's super weird. It looks like when you're a little kid and you're playing pretend on the phone and you go like this. That's exactly what you're supposed to do with it.
Yeah, that's it. You're cool. Like this. Yeah, who knew Frodo could use that for Apple Pay? I wouldn't have threw that in the volcano. What a dum-dum. Hey, man, where are you at today? You are based out of Richmond, Virginia, but I could tell by your surroundings, it looks like you are in a hotel room.
That is correct. Yeah, I'm in Mountain View, California. I just flew in today about 5 hours ago. And I'm going to be attending the Google I/O conference, which is their annual developer conference. It runs Tuesday through Thursday, and then I've got some other stuff I'm doing on tomorrow. So.
Oh, that's so exciting! What are you looking forward to?
All the announcements. Google I/O is just like WWDC is for Apple, where here's all your new products, here's the new devices, it's all the fancy stuff. So when you're there in person, it's cool just to connect with all the other developers there, but it's also cool to get that one piece of swag. When I was there, the first time I've been there was 6 years ago, and that's the only other time I've been to Google I/O. But that's the year they came out with the Google Glasses, so I got to officially pre-order it. Although I never actually paid for it because I realized it was going to be $1,500, and I was like, eh. But I got a little block at home that says I'm a pre-orderer. So just lots of cool stuff at that conference, and all the cool new stuff coming out from Google is going to be there. So really exciting. And
let me ask you though: is there anything that you might have heard of, a rumor or anything like that you're hoping that they announce?
Well, I put the bad rumor on Twitter. I saw a DeLorean downtown here in Mountain View. So I said they're giving away those to everybody. But I think more so I've heard things about maybe some sort of Chromebook or tablet or Google Home Mini or something I don't know. No, I don't have anything grand, but probably some iteration of one of those.
So, Sam, what do you do? Can you explain kind of like what your current role is in
Sure.
where do you work even?
Oh yeah, sure. So my main gig's at Capital One. They're an awesome big bank here in the U.S., and I work for them. So I am a lead Android developer, lead software engineer there. So I didn't take the management role, so I don't actually manage people, but like I help like write code and I help kind of do mentoring with different teams that we have there. So it's a really cool position because I didn't want to do that role where you have to manage 5 people, just because it's not something I like to spend my time on. I'd rather spend my time digging into the code and figuring out what's going on. And they have really cool the ability to do that at Capital One with this individual contributor path. So that's been really cool, and that's what I do: write code. I'm an Android developer.
That's awesome. So wait, where were you when you first fell in love with Android development?
I was in Melrose, Massachusetts, in a 1-bedroom apartment. So
please tell the story. Yes.
My wife and I just got married. We were living up in Boston we lived there for about a half a year in 2011. And when we were living there was like this thing that came up that was like, oh, Android's neat. So I started looking into it. I started just kind of developing at home, like as I had extra time in that 1-bedroom apartment. I ended up doing a hackathon at the end of that year, and that's like my first Android apps I ever did. After that, I did some consulting on the side, but kind of just it grew from there. And I've got this whole thing I wanted to talk about later. I don't want to jump into it, so cut me off, either of you, if it goes too much. But I won't hit my. But the one tip like I kind of wanted to give is like, so Android became this thing that was like super cool for me, and I think we're gonna go into my history of how I'm like I used to be a web dev, used to be a Java dev, and everything else. But with Android, it was something that I was interested in enough to like want to work after work or figure things out like that. And so when I talked to one of my friends that's an iOS dev out in San Francisco, she was saying, "Oh yeah, like I just do part-time stuff, and they'll put I can pay $100 an hour, or I get paid $100 an hour." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I almost made half of that once. Like, you know, it was mind blowing. And she's like, "Oh yeah, well I just specialize in it." I'm like, "But I do web development and stuff." And she's like, "Yeah, but everybody does web development, you know, like you have to specialize." So it was a mix of like her mentioning that and then just running with it. So I've just tried to like I know a lot of other things. I'm good at Angular. I know other things, but like try to focus on the new things in Android, just because I find it really interesting.
Let me ask you, what year was that?
So that was 2011 is when I started learning Android.
Oh, okay, yeah. There's some context of time, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So by now you might be kind of good at it.
Well, yeah, I've got some stuff under my belt. I've done a lot of talks and a bunch of conferences national within the U.S. here, and this past November I got recognized as a Google developer expert, and there's a program that they have where if you are representing yourself in the developer community through talks or blogs or anything else like that, there's only a select few, but like in the Android group I've been I guess nominated as one. So that's pretty cool, and that means that the more I share, the more kind of impact I can make. And there's actually an event tomorrow before Google I/O that I'm going to go to just for that. So super excited.
Oh, that's cool.
Amazing.
That you're going to speak at?
No, I don't want to speak, please. No, I love speaking at things, but at Google, man, yeah, I want them to tell me what to do. Well, maybe next year I'll tell them something, but this is my first year, so I just want to learn as much as I can.
Oh, okay. This is your first year at the event. That's cool.
Yeah. I just went the one time 6 years ago, completely unaffiliated. That was, I think, the spring after I started learning Android, and it was cool, but I didn't know it would ever come to this.
That's awesome. And you also do instructional things, right? We could jump into what is it, Caster IO? Yeah.
So there's a really well-known Android developer, Don Felker, who runs Caster.io, and it was essentially like advanced online training, like little snippets of like video screencasts, instructional tutorials that'll like get to the point and get you like, you know, I think he says skyrocket your Android career or something like that. But I talked to him on and off on like different channels, and we talked at one point. I was like, "Hey, are you interested in doing some lessons on there?" I've always liked video editing. Like I always like screencasts and things like that. So it was a really good fit, and so I've done some lessons on there. And I think it's a really great platform. I think there's really good content, and that's just another way that I can keep sharing content about Android. So I've got like 10 lessons up on there.
10? That's like crazy. Some
Oh
people
no,
don't
no,
even
there's
get
people in there with like 50. It's nuts.
what?
I'm a noob.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
okay.
hours of
People
content.
that been on there for like a long time. How long have you been contributing? Since when?
A year now, I think. But there's a guy, Chris, that just came on. He is a React Native developer. He has 3 courses, which is like 3 or 4 hours worth of content. Like it is maddening, like how much. Like he is a machine. He talked to me about his process, and like he's just really focused and really good. So bravo to him. But
Well, that's great. It's always great to have people that we could kind of measure ourselves with skills and learn
yeah,
from.
absolutely. Like, yeah, I mean, that's what's neat too, because even if you learn, you know, something well, and like, you know, like I know Android pretty well now, but every single person you talk to, whether they're a brand new developer or an old developer, you see a different perspective of like how you could approach something. So, what was neat here is like when Chris was talking about how he went ahead and did this, he actually just recorded himself clicking through every, no, what did he do? So he wrote out his whole entire script. He read it, recorded all the audio. Then he went through and then recorded clicking everything on the screen. And then later on, he just edited them together. So it was like this thing that we normally do, like, oh, I'm going to do one lesson, and break it up. He just did the whole thing and said it was like maddening, but like he got so much more done and it was so much faster. So that was a really cool, like, we're doing the same thing, making lessons, but he had this really neat approach that just makes it go really fast.
Yeah, if that works for him, that's an interesting way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same. I was like, wow, that's a lot of commitment, but that's good.
Yeah. Well, obviously it worked. There's all his content, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well,
great stuff.
Well, speaking about kind of, you know, doing these courses, how did you get your start in not only Caster.io, but teaching in general and speaking?
That's a really good point. So my first public talk was in the end of 2011, maybe like November or something like that, or September. I just moved to Richmond, Virginia at the time. So my wife and I had moved around. Like I said, we lived in Boston. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, but we were in Richmond. I knew people there that did like local meetups, like the Java user group and stuff like that. And they were like, you should do a talk. And I was like, sure, why not? Okay. So I was like, what about one like exploring the Facebook API? And it was like people came out like herds to go see it because they were like, oh, I want to know how to put Facebook on my webpage and like connect people and figure out their email address and their phone number and all that stuff. So that was a really positive experience, and that kind of like helped this go forward. But I was really inspired. I had always kind of wanted to do it because I found that tech community meetups, whether we lived in Boston or whether we lived in Texas or whether it was up in DC where my family's at, like whenever I went to them, you always find new topics that you don't know much about and people that are passionate about them. So that's really cool that you guys are going to that event in Fort Lauderdale. You went to DevFest Florida. Like there's so many people that have so much interesting knowledge and different ways of looking at it that like it's really fun stuff. So
yeah, for sure. I think I mean, we were at the last conference we went to was Front End Design Conference, and you know, personally, like I met like a lot of speakers that I'd never even heard of before, and it was kind of amazing to hear concepts like, you know, there's not only kind design but kind development, right? You know, like having ARIA standards in your code and things of that nature, and the full on concepts of CSS Grid just beyond being able to just use it, but actually like get advanced with it and get excited about it, and just like a crazy number of things. And it's really cool that you don't necessarily like think about those things until you meet literally like 40 other people who are just as passionate about, you know, web development, or, you know, even in your case, like Android. And they say something like, oh, well, this is how I did, you know, maps or something like that. And you're like, oh, I didn't even think that you could do it like that.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
Those are the little like gems that you want to hear. That's so awesome.
Yeah, what would you say the human experience is for going to these conferences? Like people could just watch a video, obviously on YouTube, or read a tutorial, but what would you tell people where's the value in these actual experiences with people one-on-one when you go to these things?
I actually have a Slack group with a lot of people that are attending this conference here. And so there's people some are going to watch the videos remotely and some are going to be here. And one person that's going to be the first time at their conference, they were like, oh, I got to make every session. I don't know how that's going to be possible. And then the people that have been there a lot like said, you could do that if you were at home. If you're here, you need to be hanging out with people. And like, that's what you get when you're at the conference is you go to the talks that you're really super interested in, that you feel like you could get benefit something from. And then you also just pick a few that like, you know, they work out with your schedule and you'll find something interesting out. But what's neat there is it like plants a seed, And then if something clicks enough, like you could go talk to that person that made the talk at the conference or whatever and say, hey, this is what I'm doing in my project. This is really neat. And then you make a little connection. And now you know that person that was an expert in that area. And maybe you met the person that they were talking to. And now like somebody else on Twitter that knows your face. So when you ask a question, you're not just like guy 314, you're like Frederick or like, so it's a big deal. So yeah, it's about making those connections really. Like, I mean, you can just like the ability to have access to talk to them, but also to make those personal connections. So the next time you have a real question, it bubbles up so that you're somebody that knows somebody. And random, like, I'm really good at making up, not regurgitating stats where I don't know where I got them from, but like a lot of things are who you know, not necessarily what you know.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I'll have to test that out a little bit because I've gone to a lot of these conferences and I've met a lot of people, and there's so many people that are way smarter than me in Android. So it's a balance though, right? Like I told my wife, I'm like, oh man, how did I become a GD? This is crazy. But like it is a lot of you are smart enough, and then you're sharing enough, and you're making an impact, and people are appreciating that. So like it all adds up. It's one big package. Yeah. And
kind of like you said, you could actually interact with those people at the conference. Yes. You could knock on their brain and say, hey, I was thinking about doing this. Do you do this way? What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely. That is so big. And then, yeah, I mean, it's hard to explain something like that usually in a couple minute answer, but like to be able to take that home if you need to and have a stretch out. Can I go back to something you said real quick, Janelle? So
yeah,
you were talking about, like, you saw that talk about CSS grid, mm-hmm. right? Like, and that just made my mind blow again because it just reminded me of so many layers of abstraction, right? We go to these new conferences, new talks, and they're like, you can do this with one click. And you're like, oh, this is awesome. And it's great. You add it in. And so, for instance, like you use something like Bootstrap or something with like a grid framework, for doing your CSS layouts, and it's awesome. But then you realize like everything that came before that and like how it breaks down and what it actually means. I read an article on Hacker News the other week, and it was like, did you know C++ is a modern language, or C is a modern language? And I was like, who uses C? Like those crazy programmers, right? Like they're like, no, it actually is a modern language. Modern language. The other ones are the ones that actually deal with like bytecode and stuff that are like low level. I was like, I don't know about that. I think JavaScript is high level language.
Okay, you need to like leak that to us because I need to read that now.
Oh my god, no! It just made me depressed. I was like, no, I'm fine. I do what I need to do with the things I have. Like, I don't need to know how to manipulate bytecode. I could figure it out if I had to, but let's not go there.
Yeah, that's a whole nother path, right?
But I guess what I'm saying is there's just abstractions on top of abstractions, right? So that each time that we have a new developer come on and we teach them things and they learn that much quicker, this thing that used to take us a long time to do, it's just because somebody's wrote a logical abstraction on top of that lets you just say, like, I would like to add a point on the map, and you just say, here's where the point is, and they don't have to go draw the geometries of everything below it. And it's just, it's crazy. Because as Janelle said, like when you go to talk, you learn that one part, and then you realize you talk to the expert, and then they peel back a layer and peel back a layer and peel back a layer, and the rabbit hole just goes down.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's I'm not sure if you know about Dan Abramov, who is like the Redux person of amazingness. He a couple of months ago was just like, I am just incredibly amazed by all of these junior developers coming up into the scene now, because they're making websites in like 3 days, and it took me so long to just make like a table on a page. Yeah. So
that's exactly it.
What did you say that you used to make websites in? I think I read on your website you use Netscape something.
You read my website. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I use Netscape Composer.
Netscape Composer, that was it, yeah.
So that was in my freshman year of high school, which was really cool that they let me do it in high school. But yeah, that was, like 97, 98, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know why we don't use that anymore.
I don't know. No, it was like the precursor to Dreamweaver. Like Dreamweaver was like the drag and drop like web page creator thing, and that went all fancy. But Composer was like the really cheap open source version of that.
Yeah.
Speaking of kind of getting things to trickle down and teaching people abstractions, you have your website that Frederick was talking about, Handstand Sam, where you talk about tips and tricks, and you kind of break things down to be a little bit more accessible to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we can go into whole why I'm Handstand Sam, but it's because Sam Edwards is taken pretty much everywhere. But yeah,
but the handstand, we need to go into that.
Do you want to go now and then go into the website?
No, we can do this later. This is going to be a fun part at the end.
Wait, which one's later? Okay, the handstands later.
A handstands later, yeah.
All right, handstands later. All right, I don't know if I have room in here anyway, but all right, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so the website I created super selfishly back in the day, and I've actually had many websites before that. But the reason why I wrote blogs was because I figured out a problem that I couldn't figure out on Stack Overflow or anything else, and I said, "How the heck did I just do that?" And so it was just a brain dump of like, "Oh, I did these 3 settings, and this made it work, and this I finally figured out this was why because I did it wrong these other ways." So like I started doing those sort of blogs, and eventually like you get to something that like a lot of people have had that problem with, and they get that little breakthrough moment, and they're like, "Oh, that's how you did it." And so I think it's helped on that blog that I've had quite a few of those like breakthrough like posts where people have like connected with it. So I try to share those as much as I can as soon as something breaks through, but I don't want to write stuff on there if I just to write stuff. So it's kind of a little scattered, but it's there.
Oh, that's super useful for people and for yourself, obviously.
Yeah, no, and so like I did a talk at DroidCon Boston, kind of about teaching and learning new things, which I'm not trying to jump to that, but there's a thing I said in there that's if you're sharing, you should be 51% altruistic, which is like I want to help everyone in the world. I'm super kind, and then you should be 49% selfish, meaning that like, oh well, somebody's going to read my blog, and then I might get more credit for something, or where the 51% is like, I want people to be able to have access to this and find this answer. But then also when they find it, I wrote it on my own blog, and now they know it's me instead of I wrote a Stack Overflow thing, right? Like you could do both, but anyway, I think that's a good principle for anybody that's like, well, I don't know if I want to share or not. Like they do it for the greater good, but then there's also personal kickback on it as well. Like I don't know what they call it, but like building your brand and like gaining, I don't know what the terms are for that, but some financial analogy. Of like building equity or something. Yeah.
So social equity, possibly. Yeah. I think that makes sense. I mean, you are providing a, I guess, a service, for lack of a better term. You're sharing, and then you also want people to know, yeah, that came from me. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't we? I need to go into the whole handstand thing and all that, and why it's handstand. Let's jump into that. Let's turn over and talk about that.
Okay. So the whole thing is I've done like around almost 600 handstand. Well, I've done more than that, but like I have photos of 600 handstands around most of the U.S. states. I think I'm missing 3 states, and then around like 10 countries. So this started out. The first picture I have is in high school. And then I had a few after that. And then in 2005, I got more. And then as I traveled around by myself and then with my wife, we took a whole bunch. You may have seen this guy's blog or this guy's video. It's called "Where the Hell is Matt?" Did you ever see it? He did this like little stupid dance thing. And it like, we'll have to link to that at the end of this.
Yeah, we'll link to that in the show notes.
I mean, if we put it in right now in a video, your ratings would just like jump right at this exact moment. And then like, it's pretty amazing.
Okay, cool.
But he goes around and he like got people to dance with him. So like he would like go somewhere and then he'd get people around him to do this dance, and it became this like kind of internet. You remember this?
I'm seeing it right now and it's adorable.
Yeah, it was super cool. And so when I first started doing it, people were like, "Oh, like that, right?" And I was like, "But I did it before that." But then he inspired me to do even more. So it's like, you can't do everything yourself. So it's cool that I already had the handstand thing. He did that, and I was like, I want to do more too. So we just did it all around the U.S. and a few countries that I've been to. So handstands, I'm not very good at them, but I can do one.
Let's see it. Handstand.
So I have a Twitter moment that I put in there. So at DroidCon Boston, during my keynote on stage in front of 150 people, I did a handstand and did not mess up. So we'll yeah, I know. I was like, it was very nerve-wracking. I was doing like the Rocky thing before I went out because I was just so like nervous about it. But yeah, it went well, and we'll link to that. I think we won't try it in the hotel room.
Oh.
Yeah.
I figured that would be the case. As soon as I saw that bed there, I was like, man.
I was gonna try to flip around my shirt or whatever, because in my slides I have an Android guy doing a handstand, but
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. This is our
link to that in the show notes too.
Yeah, a little
So-
selfless plug. But Android Summit, Capital One puts it on every August. So Call for Papers is actually secretly up now. So it's going to be mid-August in DC. But
Oh, awesome. That's super cool.
yeah. I'll push the dates more once we have it official, but we're working with a few venues to try to figure out which one.
Yeah, we're gonna link that immediately. That's gonna be a thing for sure.
It's our 4th annual, so it's been a really, really good conference.
How involved are you in that?
So the first year I attended, the second year I spoke. Last year I was a co-organizer, so there was like 4 or 5 of us. So I was like liaison to like developer community, like other people that I had known in the developer community, like, hey, do you want to speak at this? And like at the event, I did like marketing and just work with people and stuff. So I chose not to speak at the event because I wanted to help organize it. And so this year, my official title is like marketing guy. I'm like, okay, so
Marketing guy.
I was like, that works. But there's already a developer lead, so I'm kind of helping him to do the dev track, and then I'll do some marketing stuff.
Let me ask you a kind of a general question about speaking in these events and conferences and whatnot.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel to contribute in such a way that you provide this level of help for so many people you might not have even met or heard of, but you touched a lot of lives and helping people understand? How does that make you feel?
It feels really good, but it's not as pretty as you think it sounds. So let me go in so I did a webinar the other week, and I was describing to somebody like, oh, how did it go? And it went great. It was super smooth, but I described it as like a salmon going like all the way upstream and then dying after it spawned. Like it did a really good job and then it just died. Just because like you put so much preparation and practice and you want to do a good job into it and you do a good job and then you're just like gone. So it's hard at that moment when you are doing it because you're nervous about it and everything that's happening. But there was a moment, I was at DroidCon Boston a couple years ago, and somebody had seen me at DroidCon New York City do a talk. And he came up to me and he was like, oh, I saw your talk there and it was really great. And then I started doing it in my company and then I did this thing. And like it was based on what you had said. And then I actually came to Boston because I heard you were speaking here. So that was like the first moment I was like, oh my gosh, like I literally really helped, this person along, gave them some inspiration, and then like so valuable that they're willing to go to another conference because I was there. So that was huge. So it's little things like that where it kind of kicks back eventually. Like it's not usually immediate. It's not just like everybody like, oh, wonderful job. Oh, great talk. It's usually like, oh my gosh, I just finished my slides. I'm done. Can I have a beer? Like that's the sort of thing.
Yeah, people might not be throwing roses at your feet after your speech, but a lot of people don't see the direct effect of how they touch people, how they influence people, but yet it's there.
No, it is. And that's the thing. It's sort of hard to see it, right? Because if somebody watches it later on, how do you know? Other than one view went up. So it's cool when it comes back around. Anise Davis is another Android developer expert who like I look up to a lot. She's really fantastic. But like she does a good job of making sure she has a good personal brand out there as well. So like her Twitter handle is like Brown Girl Dev. And so like when people share content and like mention her on it, she was explaining the other day, like it makes her feel so good because she can see the exact impact it's made on somebody. Because as you're saying, it's like all these hidden things that you're making an impact, but you don't necessarily know how, other than that page view or that something like that. So it's always cool when it comes around and you see how it works.
Yeah, Anise always has really killer talks too. They're really good.
She's so good.
Yeah. So could you tell us a little bit more about Gradle and Kotlin?
Sure.
It like seems that you're kind of huge into that right now.
Yeah. So that posted really well, and that was one of the ones where it's like I normally would have written a blog post in like a few hours and posted it, but like I wanted to be strategic about it, so I did that. But then I was like, you know what, I can make this better. So I wrote a sample app, and then I recorded myself writing the sample app with a screencast. And then I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that. And then I recorded another one, and I created like another sample app version of it. So I wanted to create GitHub code that they could go look at. I wanted to create 2 screencasts that I put into Caster.io. And then I wanted to have an awesome blog. So I did this like all 3 in together at once because I'm not going to take credit for this at all. There's an awesome guy on my team named Zach who had this idea of using Kotlin and Gradle. Like he had seen it somewhere. So like I thought it was really interesting, like the way that autocomplete and some other things, and you got to use Kotlin. So I started checking it out more. I researched it more. I found little cool things about using Kotlin DSL. So I kind of like took what he had shown me and then took other things and kind of added it all together as like the most shrink wrap, easy way to tell somebody. And that blog post just went like through the roof. Like I was in like 4 newsletters, and including the Gradle one, which was like nuts. Like I it's one of the things too where it's like Zach's the one that told me. I gave him a shout out because I asked him. I was like, "Do you want to write a blog post about this? This is so cool. Like this is so cool." And he's like, "No, you can do it." So I wrote a thing at the end. I was like, "Thanks so much, Zach. This is great."
Oh, that's nice.
But yeah, he was super helpful. And but yeah, it's not me. I just I found something useful that I wanted to share, and it's not good to steal things from people. So it's always better. I wanted to like collaborate or help him do work, and then it was just like, green light, you can go for it. I'll review it or whatever. So.
Have you ever heard of Steal Like an Artist by any chance?
No, but that sounds really cool. I'm listening.
Yes, you should totally get it. It's amazing. I will link to it in the show notes. It's about maybe 40 pages long, and it's basically all pictures.
That's my kind of book right there.
Right? It's fantastic. Essentially, it's a book by an artist for other artists or people who are doing creative work, like developers and engineers in general I think are creative people, even if they're working with just numbers, right? So essentially what he says, one of his big things is saying that it's okay to steal things, but when you're stealing things, do it in a kind way. Like you want to steal from many people and then make it your own, right? Like you don't want to immediately just be like, well, this is the theory of relativity and I totally made this all by myself. And I'm super amazing, right? Like, you don't want to do that. You want to be like, all right, so this is what I think about this and this and this and this. And thank you, Albert Einstein, because you're amazing, right? Like, so I think definitely being able to be like, look, these are all the things that I think are really cool about, Gradle and Kotlin together and all this awesomeness. And then breaking it down in a way that's digestible, not only to one specific person, but like you've got, the videos, you've got the blog posts, you've got literally everything. So more than one type of learner can actually learn and grow. I think you are definitely stealing like an artist and giving credit where credit is due.
Well,
so that's
and then
really awesome.
Giving credit to Anise again, like I talked to her about it, and I talked to Don Felker about it a little bit. And it's just like, if you have the energy, like do it all as a package, because if you can do it all, it just becomes that each thing feeds off another one, right? Because if somebody sees one part of it, they'll get pulled back in, and it just helps with the brand. And personal brand is huge. That's another reason why I picked Handstand Sam, is because it's like super unique and it's not Sam Edwards. Like when people hear it, they're like, oh, that's neat. That's weird. Like it's something they remember. So I like it.
Yeah, it's catchy. What would you say are some of the things that people might not know about these technologies that might be maybe a good sell or something that you could communicate the value of?
Oh, there are so many jobs. So many jobs. Do you want a job? You should learn how to do mobile development. I'm not kidding. Like people hire. I saw a guy that was picking up an Android book off the street. It wasn't even his. He picked it up. He got hired. I'm no, but I'm just saying. I say that there's such a high demand for mobile developers. Like that's one thing I just want to throw out there. Like,
so you think this phone fad is a thing that's going to keep on going?
So that would be cool. I mean, I've always adapted with whatever technology's out there. Like right now, that's the most like, I guess specific, like in demand thing that you can do. Like there are a lot of jobs for it, and an iPhone and an Android phone aren't going away at least for 5 years, right? Like there will be something there in some job, and if you learn that, then whatever the next technology is, they'll have a bridge of learning from that to the next thing because there'll be so many people transitioning, right? So.
Yeah, exactly.
Whenever I tell somebody actually if they're like, hey, I want to learn how to program, I say learn JavaScript and do HTML, because that's what I did. And actually, that's not true. I did C++. That was really not good. But when I started enjoying programming, I did JavaScript and CSS, and that's just because you see it immediately and it's there, and it makes it so much more fun. It's like, oh, I did that. It worked. Instead of like, oh, it's a compiler error, or what library do I have to use? Or I don't really understand this concept. You just see things happening, and it's
just jump into some vanilla JS, some simple CSS, some HTML.
show me 1 + 1 on the screen or something, you know, or a little counter or something.
Make a paragraph tag and say hello.
No, exactly. Like div heart shaped. Like I don't know. Yeah, it's big.
Aw.
Do you remember your first bit of code?
It's a good question. I mean, it was in Composer.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about in Composer. I mean, like your first line of code that you wrote.
Oh, it was in there. It was HTML tables. Like, because Composer had that view, but I couldn't do everything, so I'd have to jump over and like, there wasn't a such thing as like divs and like, I mean, there were divs, but they weren't as powerful at the time. So you really had to use tables for all your layouts, and so I'd hand code those. I think we did some Visual Basic and some C++ some years after. So those are the things that I learned next in high school. And that was neat because I saw things happening, but I always liked it more when there was something visual that I could see immediate feedback from. That just made me, that's why I like mobile too, for the most part, is you see it happen.
Nice.
Yeah.
Where do you see the future of mobile going?
I think voice is huge. So the two things, I see voice being a big thing because I forget, this is another thing where I'm quoting somebody where I don't remember their names, but it's something of this nature. But the guy that supposedly invented the smartphone, he doesn't like where things have gone because people are now sucked into it. Like they're like have to look at their phone, and he wanted it to be something that helped them, right? Like when they're out and about. And I think voice gives you the opportunity of it still interacting with your environment while like asking a question. Be like, hey, what's the weather? And then like listen to it and keep doing something versus like, you know. So I think voice is a huge thing. Like figuring out how that can be more omnipresent and there with us. Because I'm driving in the car and I'm like, Alexa, add milk to the shopping. Oh, she's not here. She's not in the car. Like it's such a bummer. I miss Alexa. Alexa, buy a large screen TV.
Alexa, I love you. I love you too.
So your listeners now are having things bought in their house. So that's all.
Hey Alexa, call mom.
Done.
So anyway, voice is huge. So our son is 2 years old. He just turned 2. But
oh, congratulations!
Thank you so much. But he's never not known Alexa. So he's thought Alexas have been a person since he's little because we've had one in his room because we play like nursery rhymes on it. We control the lights in his room. He has like a sound machine that like makes white noise at night, so that turns on and off with that. It's just nuts. Like, and it's such a natural interface. Like he sees it, it works. So I think that's so funny. Huge.
One of our guests a long time ago, he was telling us about how his son also grew up with Alexa, and how he would ask Alexa, you know, simple things. And they were in the grocery store, and his son at the time was 3 years old, and he said, "Alexa, what time is it?"
Yeah,
because he just, you know, Alexa should just be omnipresent. It just should be there.
Yeah, no, it really.
A long time ago. That was like literally like 3 days ago.
We were talking about that conversation a few days ago, but that was originally we talked about that like about maybe a year or two ago with a guest.
Oh, geez. I'm like, this happened. I feel like this conversation.
Deja vu.
Everybody's saying it. Like, my kid loves Alexa. And I'm like, man, this is an epidemic, huh?
I thought you were just trying to say technology moves so fast. 3 days ago? Oh, come on.
So do you think then it's just more about the really intelligent kind of assistants, like Siri is going to go somewhere, Alexa's going to go somewhere? So that's one piece that I think is going to be big and going to keep going. And I don't know what that's going to look like necessarily, but voice is going to continue to be huge. It's going to be omnipresent. It's going to be just there, and it's going to work better and better. Like even if you compare now versus 2 years ago, it's so much better than it was. What about gestures?
So
I just ordered
no, there's actually you have me cracking up. So if you're just listening to the podcast of this, he just did some kung fu moves and was like, "What about gestures?" I don't know.
Do so much,
I don't know. What's an example of something you've used gestures with?
I use gestures when I say hi to people. So, but like, how about gestures where, like, if I want to actually do something where, and we were talking about like that technology previously when we first started, like 5 minutes into the show, about like having a ring to where I could, you know, go blah, 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 and I could scroll past things. Like, what if I'm interacting with my device, my 10-foot away device, right? And I'm just going like this and scrolling. Is there anything like that? Or is there anything that interacts with my phone that it my phone reads my ring and I'm going like this and I'm making gestures.
Yeah, so that's really cool. I hadn't thought about that, and that's why I just started to giggle. But the way you explain it is really neat. I think that kind of goes into my next thing, which was like the way you physically interact with the environment. Like you're saying, anything that you can do to make a command or to communicate that's quicker than typing something out or looking at your phone is good. So the voicing is really good. Gestures are really good. I think that's more like use cases that are like, I don't know. I have new headphones where you do like volume up or volume down. Like there's probably things that are more standard like that. But yeah, that's really interesting. The one thing I was going to jump to that I hadn't talked about much was just like augmented reality, virtual reality a little bit, but I think just augmented reality, because you already are interacting with the world as it is right now, but you have extra information there. And I think we've always for the last 5 years or so, we've had that like on the phone. Like you could pull up like a app and it shows you like, oh, the McDonald's is over here and there's a Pizza Hut or whatever. But like it's getting to be so good. I don't know if you've played with the one on the iPhone or the new Pixels that you can add like little characters and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But like I think the creativity and the kind of stuff that's going to happen with that is just going to be unreal. I don't know how useful it'll be, but it'll be fun.
Well, just imagine practical things. Like if I'm in my car, I want a smart glass in my car. I want to be able to have at night heat vision. I want to be able to have to where it lays the roads over the windshield so I could see the path I'm going. Or if I said, hey Siri, don't do it, Siri. But if I said, hey Siri, take me to Janelle's house, and I want to see like the map at Janelle's house, and I could get there from here. You know, that's kind of cool.
Absolutely, yeah. Just it's trying to make whatever that's the key, is just our normal life, what we're doing, how do we make it easier and how do we make it more fluid? And the answer to everybody is right now is like use an app, right? But like you have to consume and be in there, where if you could just like there's all these new studies that are out that are like if you're on your phone before you go to bed, then you're not sleeping. And like like it's just not natural to be like, you know, in the bright screen all the time. So the ways that we can just be the people that we were 20 years ago, but have all these like access to information and do all these different things is going to be really neat.
Yeah, good point. Well, hey, we're starting to get close to the end of the show. Janelle, should we jump to the spotlight?
No. Man, I had literally one more question.
Well, go for it, and then we'll jump to the spotlight.
Yes, all right. So I really want to know how you end up doing it all, right? Like, I feel like you've got like 1,000,008 jobs, and you're speaking, and you've got, a kid, and you've got a wife, and you've got Alexa. How are you going about like learning things and growing and being a leader at work and still being relevant, right? Like, how do you do all of those things?
Do you mind also if I append to your point that, and since I'm a parent of a young child, I understand the lack of time, because it's, you want to spend so much time with your kids, and kids do require time. So that's a big part of being an adult and trying to do what we're doing in the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you kind of said it there. Like you spending time with your family and with your kids and things like that are so important. And I've been doing a lot more of that recently because my kid's getting older and I can play with them and everything else like that. I think Gary Vaynerchuk, I don't know if you heard about him. He's like an entrepreneur, like blogger and stuff like that. But he talks about like when you're in your 20s, like between 20 and 30, there's this time of like, you can do whatever you want. And as long as you go hard and you go deep, like you can be successful. Like you just have to like be persistent at it. And I think that's kind of what I ended up doing there, is I spent a lot of that time, like, figuring a lot of this stuff out, getting there, where now I'm still able to, like, when I spend a little extra time on different things, I'm able to make breakthroughs, but I'm not spending every single hour in front of the computer anymore. Like I make sure I take breaks because just in my life, like I want to spend time with my kids and my family and stuff like that. And it's not things before that I didn't want to do that, but like you had extra time that you could put towards those things. So it's a balance. Like, and really it's not possible to do all of them. And so that's kind of that's one of the hardest things to learn. Yeah.
Well, it's why are we working? Are we working to live or living to work? I know that sounds goofy and stupid and cliche, but I mean, at the core of it, I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah. And if you can blend them in any way, then it makes life fun. Like if your work is what you like doing, or you like what you do when you work, then like it makes things easier.
Yeah, that's great. But yeah, at the end of the day, you want to have time with your family.
Oh no, totally. Work-life balance is important. Even if you like doing that one thing, yeah, there's more to life than that. So. Cool.
I would say too, it's probably a good thing to also make sure that you find a company that aligns with, a family kind of or first mentality, maybe, or somebody that's not going to keep you at the office until midnight every day.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I think a lot of it depends on how mature that company is and what their goals are and things of that nature. Like, I think a lot of startups or a lot of people that are like more in that younger phase where they're just trying to get through, and it's a great experience, but like you don't get that balance like you're talking about. So sometimes if you're at a more established company and you have a specific skill that you can like be really good at, then that's valued just as well. So
great point. All right, Janelle, Spotlight, you going to take us off?
All right, so we could do rapid fire. You want to do rapid fire?
You want to skip the Spotlight and do the rapid fire? We're getting to
or you can do
really
Spotlight.
Close.
I mean, because you're real good at Spotlight.
I'm real good at Spotlight.
Yeah.
Sam, I am so good at Spotlight. Every week I like to ask people if they what they found this week, something that they would like to share. Usually I'll talk about something like I really enjoy Alton Brown and his meatloaf recipe. I don't know if you ever heard me talk about it, but I brag about it all the time to the point where it's annoying. Anyway, so something that you might have discovered this week, and Janelle and I will go first, and then we'll give you a chance to think of something. But it could be anything. It could be beer, chocolate, technology, anything that you might have discovered this week that you find super interesting that you'd like to share with everybody. So I'll go first. One of the things that I found really interesting, rather, is I've been watching the show called The Terror. I don't know if you guys heard of it.
No, I haven't.
No. Okay, great. So I'll fill you in. So it's a really cool show on AMC, and it's all about this accurate kind of documentary of what they think of might have happened to this certain group. Yet the other probably 90% is speculation and goes into like this kind of horror scenario. And it's a super fun show. It takes place in the 1840s. And it's about this group of British sailors that go to the Arctic to try to find a way through to the other side. And they end up getting into quite a scuttlebutt where their boats are capsized in ice, and they have to find out a way to survive. And it's super interesting. There's kind of like a spooky element to it.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that's my thing, Janelle.
Jeez, that's a pull.
It's a fun
I'm
dark
a little
show.
frightened, right? Like I haven't even seen this thing and I'm scared. I am moving. Well, actually, I finished moving, but I've got boxes everywhere. And I've actually moved from a gas stove to an electric stove, and does not compute, right? I actually went to the store to get new pots and pans because ours were just terrible. And I found these temperature sensing pots and pans, right? So they will change color to tell you when the pot and pan is like ready for you to cook on it.
That's
and
nuts.
I'm obsessed with it. They're like fantastic because with a gas stove, you can literally just put the pot or pan on the gas and then 20 seconds later, it's hot.
Yeah.
But like on electric, you're like, all right, it's been like 45 minutes. Are you sure it's okay?
I just want to preface, if it's been 45 minutes, there's something wrong with your stove. Just saying.
You know what I mean? It just feels like it's 45 minutes. It's probably like a minute and a half, but still, like it's a long time. But yeah, they change colors, and I think that's really cool. So I will find the actual brand and put it in the show notes. But yeah they're amazing, and I'm in love.
That's pretty cool. All right, Sam, what you got?
All right. So this is another plug that you should get out and either go to conferences or go do new things so you can find new bits of information. Because I learned this out this morning on the plane between Dallas and San Jose here. So there's a guy sitting next to me, and he had this like little accent or whatever. I was like thinking he lived in Dallas or something like that. So I asked him, I'm like, oh, where are you from? He's like, oh, I'm from Little Rock. I'm like, okay, that's neat. Where are you heading? Oh, I'm going to Oakland. I'm actually I work at the medical center at in Little Rock, and he's a doctor of audiology, and so he was telling me about that. And so I was like about to go to sleep. I had like my little noise canceling headphones on or whatever, and I was like, hold on, wait, let me ask this guy, how does this work? Right? The noise canceling headphones are like, I bought them like 2 weeks ago, and I'm just obsessed. Like, how is it working? And so he like actually drew out how it works. Like if you look at like a sound wave that kind of looks like up and down. So he showed me that like if it goes down and up, then basically what they're doing is they're shoving a sound wave that looks directly the opposite. So it basically like shoves it down to 0. So you don't hear anything at all. And so that's really good for things like jet noise, which goes or something like that. But it can't dynamically pick up something like a human voice that goes up and down and all around. But it was just this mind-blowing thing of like noise cancellation that just like blew my mind today. And he explained it and like went into all sorts of stuff about how guitar pickups work with all the sound vibrations, and like we talked about microphones, and he used to work on like hardware stuff, and like this is really cool, fun conversations about like sound and microphones, and it's really neat stuff. So the noise canceling headphones are my recommendation, and how they work is just really neat.
And what are the headphones that you have that you recommend? The ones that you like?
They're like Sony M something 1000. Sorry, I'm not the best person selling this. Sony MX 1002 or something like that.
1002, got it.
Something like that, yeah. Plus or minus. Yeah.
All right, we're getting to the rapid fire. Pow, 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 Janelle.
Yes, rapid fire. This is my favorite part of the show, which is where we get to ask you questions really, really fast, and you just think of the first thing that comes to your head, which is really awesome. So we could ask you anything like, what's your favorite pizza topping, all the way to, what's your favorite language? But yeah, it's just going to be real fast, and we're going to do it for about a minute. Sounds good?
Oh my gosh. All right. Cool.
Or 2 minutes. Who knows?
Maybe it might be 5 minutes.
We'll see how rapid I can be. Yeah.
We'll cap it at 3 minutes. Go ahead, Janelle. Okay. You go first.
All right. So, first one first. And what's your favorite language?
Mandarin.
Favorite cartoon as a kid?
The Jetsons.
What's the color of your wife's nail polish right now?
Like a pinkish, like tan color.
What was the last photo you took on your phone?
It was of the pizza that I ate before this.
Nice. Look for that on Instagram, everybody.
Pet peeve.
People that ask questions after talks when their only purpose is to go up there and say that they're really smart about something, and not actually ask a question that helps the entire audience.
Nice. That's a good point.
Those feels.
What's one of your favorite things about yourself?
That I am a nice person.
Oh, that's awesome. What's been your favorite job thus far? Doesn't have to be development. It could be literally any job.
It's definitely being a dad. Yeah.
Oh.
Love that. You get home, it's midnight, you open the door, there's a ghost. What do you do? What did you do?
Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters.
Sing it, Bobby Brown. Not too hot, not too cold. Call the Ghostbusters because they're in control.
What is your favorite site for inspiration?
So I already listed Hacker News is really good. News.ycombinator.com. It's just a lot of really interesting new tech stuff.
What podcast are you listening to right now?
Fragmented podcast I listened to today, actually. It's an Android development podcast.
Nice.
Jello or cake?
Cake. Cake with frosting. Because that frosting isn't real cake.
Hey, didn't you wear that shirt the day after yesterday, Sam?
That's today, right? Day after yesterday. Yeah, I did.
Oh, almost got you. I gotta think about it.
Speaking of your shirt, Sam, is this shirt about the Android Dev Summit?
It sounds really similar, so I think we've gotten people to be interested in our thing, but it's not. Android Dev Summit was run by Google for a little while, and they don't do that anymore. It's just the Android Summit. So this is an event sponsored and organized by Capital One, but it's for the community.
Nice.
Coolio.
Well, Sam, we are just about out of time. I want to ask you if you have any kind of final words of wisdom, anything you would like to bestow upon our audience? Floor is yours, sir.
Sure. I think it's going to be what we talked about earlier, which is find something that you enjoy working on and specialize in that. Find something that's super needed that you like and do that. While you're enjoying learning about it and doing things, document the things you've learned in a form of a blog, to be a little selfish so that you know it later, but to share that content later on. And these things will snowball into creating a personal brand for you that sets you apart from other people to be an expert in that area.
And when you say creating a blog, would you say creating a blog on Medium or on your own site for a brand?
I've had this question before, and I highly suggest your own site, because when a blog article gets shared, it'll say handstandsam.com, not medium.com. And so that's big.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we preface that. And
oh, yeah. No,
yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. Well, hey, Sam, how can people get a hold of you? What's the best way? If they did a handstand and called your name 3 times like Beetlejuice, like how do we get a hold of you?
Twitter. I'm on Twitter too much.
What's your Twitter handle?
It's Handstand Sam.
Boom! How could you not
branding?
Yeah, everywhere.
Well, hey man, thanks for being on the show and sharing
this is so
with
much
us.
fun. This is so much better than presenting. I'm just getting to chill. This is fun. Thanks so much for having me on, Janelle and Fridger.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, man. Super happy that you were able to come on and talk to us. And
yeah.
I mean, I know you were traveling, so thank you so much for spending some time with us, even though I'm sure you just want to go to sleep.
No worries. It was good to do it, so I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man.